I think all of them is important to reiterate the other speakers to say that depends what state of the company, the difference important. So early on, the ideas is, can you connect that idea into some executions that a customer can respond to? I think that's number one test. And then if you be able to be successful doing that, and then can you iterate to a business model so you can continue to have fun, do what you are doing, right? But ultimately, too, I think you hear all the speaker here, it's reiterate, is ultimately startup as a team sport. It is your visions, but you require resources, you require partners, you require a customer. So for me, I think nowadays the number one thing that can you connect a product with the consumer and resonate it with them. And then you can say of all the recent success company today, not because they have their idea was original or anything, but because they be able to execute it well, build a great product, and connect it with the consumer, and that's where they build a brand. Because nowadays, if you build something that's not great, then the consumer is going to give you bad remark, and that's you're pretty much done. You're going to swim upstream after that. So I think the important thing, if you have an idea, you have to execute in a way to connect with the consumer, and then the hardest part for you to figure out who are your customer of your idea. I think that's the hardest part for most entrepreneurs.
So let's talk a little bit about all the different areas where startups are being formed. There's areas like the web and mobile and social media, and now we're hearing about the cloud and big data. So it seems like there's some areas that get a lot of attention, maybe some areas that don't get quite as much attention. And so I would love to get your perspective on what areas are kind of the hot areas, and does that matter for an entrepreneur who's thinking about doing a startup?
Yeah, this kind of dovetails back into the last question as well. I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, there's something called a pivot that happens, which is you have an idea initially, you feel very passionate about it, you go out and do it, maybe you form a team around that, your best friend or maybe some colleagues, but then you find out that the market doesn't really want that. You go talk to customers, or you build it and you put it out there and you're like, oh, I'm not getting any sales. And then so you have to change your idea slightly in order to make it into something that customers actually want. And I think this is part of the discovery that you have to do kind of by yourself before you go to a VC firm. A lot of people think, okay, what I do is I get an idea, I go to a VC firm, I get money, and then everything will work out. A lot of times you'll have to show some traction unless you have a prior record before anybody's willing to invest in you. And so that process of experimenting with your initial idea to find out what resonates with the market, I think is really important. As far as what industries are hot, the other thing is that there are types of companies that become billion-dollar companies that a lot of people want to invest in. But as a business owner or as a startup person, you don't need that kind of outcome necessarily for you to be very successful as a startup person. So there's kind of the really huge growth stories, but then also I think there are a lot of businesses that you can start that don't need a lot of capital, that can be respectable, mid-sized businesses, or maybe can even eventually grow into a very large business. So I wouldn't consider venture capital as a requirement for any idea that you want to pursue. I just consider that as kind of an option.
So the areas, the buzzwords right now is anything mobile, because phone's changing everything. Collaborative consumption, Justin's doing amazing things in that space. He's also doing something really amazing. He did something amazing in the content space. I think that's a big theme as well. So collaborative consumption, mobile, social is always big. But social is a gift that Facebook has given us, so what can we build on top of it now? It's abundant now. Enterprise is having resurgence as far as the investor community is concerned. We've seen all these companies that have consumer distribution models working in the enterprise, so people are excited about that. And that also requires infrastructure, which is supported by the whole cloud computing investment theme that some firms have taken on. Those are the main areas. For me, I'm very thematic, so I look a lot in where's the next revolution in one theme in communications. I'm excited about that, so if anyone's got interesting ideas there. How do you humanize communications? I'm also very interested, continue to be interested in content. I think we've got to the point where we need to start to see these platforms actually really be used by the folks that are creating culture online. And culture online is only created when you have content people can engage on and norms can form around. So we haven't seen the best content creation tools created digitally yet. So let's see some of that. I also like the whole idea of accountability and just responsibility on the web. I think that's a big theme there. Infrastructure, we have a company, Stripe, it's an amazing payments company, but it's along the lines of how do you facilitate all of this that we're talking about? And then also enterprise. I do like the predictability of the enterprise. As an investor, you can sort of build up a predictable portfolio when you start to invest in enterprise companies.
So if I could jump in here, well, one described Bessemer as a roadmap-driven firm, much like John described. And really, the sectors we're interested in is hypergrowth sectors across the economy. And so that can mean healthcare, that can mean our India practice, that's just looking at that region as an engine of growth. But if I could just double-click once on the cloud computing, or we can call it enterprise software, we can call it a number of things, but hold on to that cloud idea. Here's an example of a market that's built very large companies over the past 25 years. We're talking about the Oracles, the SAPs, who have built their empires really on this idea that business needs software to run. Well, that whole paradigm is being shifted over. That whole paradigm is being re-examined, not only from the application tier, which is where the dollars first started flowing 10 years ago when you saw the Salesforce.coms, through sort of each category. You work your way across CRM, you work your way to Workday, which is going to be phenomenal. But now you're starting to see innovation flipping over on the lower tiers as well. Amazon came in with AWS, and sort of the big vendors who had the big iron are coming in and thinking about ways to repackage and reignite that business as a service. But as folks in the middle, the people like Twilio, I don't know if you guys are tracking guys like this, but people who really ignite the developer citizenry and say, hey, I'm a developer, I have these skills, I have an idea, what do I need to pull together, stitch together, and get my idea out into the market? So we have done a lot of thinking, and we've done a lot of learning, working with entrepreneurs working in this space. So I'm going to put one plug in for the BVP website. So that's B as in boy, V as in Victor, P as in Peter.com/cloud, because we re-released sort of our findings over the past 10 years. It's called the 10 Laws of Cloud Computing. If you're interested in one firm's take on it, that's a public resource for you guys to check out.
It's a good paper.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about funding options, right? So, if you decide that you wanted to do a startup, it obviously takes money to get it going. And we've got a couple of funding sources here represented. So we'd love to get your take on, what options are available to entrepreneurs, and is there a right fit for a certain type of funding versus another type? Justin, I know you're with Y Combinator, so I'd love to maybe start with you on that.
Sure. So there's a couple types of funding that startups go through. The earliest thing like seed funding, where you get money from your own pocket or a couple friends of yours, local friends or your family, and sometimes like a seed firm like Y Combinator, which invests a very small amount in early stage companies. When it's just two people and like an idea or an early product prototype. And then, after you get your product a little bit along the road, you might raise like an angel round, which you can get from like other rich friends of yours, richer friends, or your other people who have been entrepreneurs in the space that made some money and might want to stay involved and connected. Or there's people who are angels kind of professionally now, that you can get money from, and that's usually in the couple $100,000 or now like million, $1.5 million range. And then after that, you might do a venture round from one of these guys down on the other side. But I think the best advice I ever got about getting money was just get it wherever you can. From Mark Benioff said that. It was just like, he didn't raise any venture money for Salesforce. There was $60 million from rich individuals, and he just went out there and he couldn't convince any VCs to give him any money. But now he laughs at him, right? Because he's got Salesforce, and he just went out and hustled money from like wherever. And that was really inspiring to me, because I think that in Silicon Valley there's this kind of path that people think startups go through, and a lot of them do, but there's other ways to do it, and those businesses created all over the world. They get money from wherever they can get money, and that's like it's like dollars from a VC or dollars from an angel or dollars from like your super rich uncle. They'll all spend the same. So.
Now there's funding sources like Kickstarter, right? Crowdfunding. That's a relatively new.
Yeah, Kickstarter is a great place to get money because you don't have to give up any of your company for it, and it's you get it all up front to develop your product. It's kind of incredible. If you can have a great Kickstarter story, one YC company did a watch that raised $10 million on Kickstarter. It's pretty nuts.